So there we go. Here we go, guys. Here we go. All right, I think we're streaming. Check, testing 1 2. How's it coming through? Testing 1 2. How's it coming through? How's everybody doing? All right, so in this stream, we're going to do some more illustration live. There we go. And we're going to be doing some slimes. And I wanted to do the entire process this time on the stream. There's been a few streams that I've done where I've already had the line art worked out, and I just wanted to kind of do the entire thing from scratch so you guys can see exactly how I do this. All right, so what I'm going to do, let me turn this down a little bit. Is do exactly what I do. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to pull up my Google Photos account. Okay, and so what I've done is I've just taken snapshots of a very, very rough, loose couple of illustrations here. Actually, this is just on like a notebook paper, and I've done a couple of slimes here that I really like, and definitely this one I'm going to start with. So I just copy it to my clipboard, and then we're going to start up paint.net. I don't need my reference sketch to be high resolution or anything like that. I need my document in paint.net to be nice high resolution. So Control N will start a new document. I'm going to put in my resolution here first, 350, and then my paper width. So this is going to be, I do it double the size of the actual card. So not only is it 350 DPI or PPI, but it's also going to be twice the size of the card. A lot like the comic book artists do. They'll illustrate on 11 by 17 paper, and then it gets shrunk down to A4 size. So my width is going to be 10. It's going to be 10 by 6. 6, there we go. So half of 3 by 5 or 5 by 3, right? There we go, at 350 DPI. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit and then just go ahead and Control V to paste in that illustration. So now I can size up my illustration. Again, not worrying about losing quality. When you blow up something bigger than its original resolution, you'll start to get these artifacts and pixelization. As I zoom in on this, you can see this is just really muddy in here, and it's not a very high resolution image anyway. Okay, so there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'll double click on the layer and then just lower the opacity, and I'll go ahead and rename this sketch just to help myself out. Create a new layer, drop it below that one. This one's going to be filled with white. And how I did that just now is a F on the keyboard switches to the fill bucket tool. You can use the right mouse button, or for me, I'm using Wacom. That's the Intuos 4 small pen and touch. And you've got buttons that you can map, and I just have this one set to my right mouse button. The other one will be, if I just tap, it'll be like your regular left mouse click, which will fill it in with your foreground color. The right mouse button fills it in with your background color. So it's really, really quick and easy to do. I'll rename this one just white. And I'm going to use that layer actually later on. You'll see what I do. All right, so I've got my sketch. I've got just a white layer in here, and I'm going to create one more layer, and this is going to be my ink. So this is going to be what I do on top of this sketch layer. And I'm going to bring that sketch layer opacity down just even more. Okay, there we go. And then make sure I'm on my ink layer here. Go back to our screen. All right, so here's what I'm doing. I have a very basic brush. I use a 8 pixel width, and I've been using that for all of my illustrations, so I'm trying to keep these very consistent. I have my anti-aliasing turned off, and so if I zoom in on this, you can see it's actually just, it's almost like pixel art, right? There's no smoothing on it at all. I don't mind that because I'm at such a high resolution. When these get shrunk down, it's not going to matter. And I'd rather have the very clean lines that I can actually manipulate a little bit easier when it's just solid black pixels. Okay, so then essentially I'm using the sketch underneath that I did on paper as a reference, but you can see how much cleaner this is compared to that sketch. And because I'm only using it as a reference, I don't have to follow it exactly. Okay, I'll do this too. I can draw in sort of the shape of my shadow that I want. Quickly hit F on the keyboard to go to the fill bucket tool and fill it right in. Another nice thing about turning off that anti-aliasing is I know that I don't have any gaps in that fill, right? And essentially this is just like a monoline single weight illustration, and then those shadows really help sort of simulate the dynamic of line weight in a way. I prefer just drawing shadows rather than messing with like pressure sensitivity. I see other artists do it and they do such a great job. I also see a lot of artists doing a lot of undos until they get that line just the way they want it. And I just really don't care about that so much. I want my lines to be bold, thick, and chunky, and just kind of yes or no. This one I'll just fill in by hand there. So I don't want to lose the sort of organic feeling of this hand-drawn illustration. I don't want it to look over digital or over cleaned up. I don't want it to look perfect. This is not a logo or supposed to be vector art, right? I like some imperfections in it. I like some of the wobble. If it's distracting, that's another thing, but I don't mind it looking like it's been made by hand. So now I can kind of make these micro decisions in a very clean, digital environment. Do I want these spots here? Do I want 2? Do I want 3? Do I want the eyes to look this way or that way? And it's just very fast. You can see here how I quickly filled in these eyes. I wanted them to be solid black, and I just kind of filled them in with my marker on paper. When you're in paint.net, you can do the same technique in Photoshop or any bitmap image editing software that allows you to draw very simple lines. I can quickly fill in these big areas of solid black just by switching to the paint bucket tool and then back to my brush. So F on the keyboard goes to the fill bucket, B goes back to the brush. Now these slimes are nasty. They have very few hit points in the game. And this is for game art. This is going to be a card and dice based tabletop adventure RPG. And these slimes, they only have 3 hit points, but they have a death effect. So when they die, when they are killed, they do a splatter damage to all players. And it's just one point of damage, but the real nastiness of it is if you take any damage from these slimes, you are automatically poisoned. So there's no getting out of getting poisoned when you fight these guys. Even though they only have 3 hit points, they're easy to kill. They will poison you when they die because they splatter. Now, I want this game to be very challenging. I want, I want the players to actually be afraid that they're going to die in the game, of course. And when you play with more players, it becomes a lot easier. And you're able to protect each other and use your abilities in ways that really complement and enhance the other players' characters. So it's a cooperative game for sure. You have to play it as a party with a common goal, and if you don't really look out for each other, you're all going to die. You'll be poisoned by slimes and eaten by monsters. So that's the idea of the game. So just continue drawing in these shapes, making my lines. These little marks that I do, I'm really inspired by Mike Mignola, who's the author and illustrator of the Hellboy comics, and he sort of does this. It helps things not look so clean and clinical, and just a few lines can really imply a lot of information. So he'll make these little marks. It almost looks makes his characters look like they're made out of stone, or that they've just been, weathered by battle, which Hellboy is. So to me, this illustration would be very boring without these cast shadows in here. Very, very simple shapes, very simple lines. But without those cast shadows, it would feel kind of flat. So it's a very easy and quick way for me to kind of give the impression or the illusion of depth. I'm not switching back and forth to a lot of brushes, or worrying about pressure sensitivity or getting that line pulled just right. Just got a single 8-pixel brush, no anti-aliasing, and making shapes I can draw very, very quickly this way. My computer also keeps up really, really well. You've got lots of fancy brushes and stuff, and it's doing all these cool dynamics and things. It can be taxing on your computer. For me in particular, especially when I'm streaming, I don't have the most expensive or latest greatest anything, which is sort of a motif of this entire project, as well as the sort of the ethos and the way that I kind of work. I want to get more from less. I don't need more from more. That's kind of given. I want to do more with less, become more efficient and faster, and not need as much to do better work. And it's not about being cheap. I think you should pay for your software if it's If it's licensed, then buy a license. But also support low budget and no budget projects, open source software. You know, get really good with that, and you'll be good with anything. And you can help some folks out too. So this is paint.net, and if you are so inclined, you can visit getpaint.net. You can download it for free, and you can also help contribute to further development. There's lots of really, really cool plugins for it, and there's a good community behind it. All right, so you'll see me do this sort of tooth thing here, this kind of dithering. And essentially I'm just doing this. I'm just making a few of these kinds of lines like that. And basically the idea is just to not make it look so flat, especially like as like the shadow is wrapping around a surface that has contour. It's not such a stark change, not just black and white. It sort of implies a transition, right? I try to be restrained about it too. I don't want it, you know, I don't want the whole illustration to look like that. But all right, these little blobs that are being left behind, they need a little bit of a shadow underneath them. See how that just already just kind of pushes it off the ground just a little bit, so it kind of gives it a little bit of depth. It's not completely flat. It's got it's almost like a gelatinous sort of consistency. Just draw this one in, brush it in by hand. There we go. All right, now these lines here, these are to kind of indicate like a shininess or a reflection, and I'm going to do that. Actually, just hit O on the keyboard. Again, my curve or line tool is set to be 8 points or 8 pixels. I have also my end caps on rounded, so this is what the line will look like. And I'm going to use this and hold shifts so I can get really, really straight lines. And the line tool is really cool because you can adjust it after you create it. And I want these to be really, really straight, just like up and down. And I'm going to do a few of these, and then maybe one more here, and then sort of fill in between. I'll get my eraser and I can erase those little parts I did outside. Go to the F on the makes the fill bucket here, and I can fill in some of these. All right, maybe I'll do one more over here. Fill that in. See, if I hold shift, it'll snap. Just a couple on that one. Back to the curve tool. I'll break that one up just a little bit. Pull this one down. Okay, F on the keyboard. Go back to fill these in. Then I'll go back to the brush and kind of work with these a little bit. So it's almost like a goo or some sort of residue maybe he's like leaving behind. That's kind of what I'm going for. All right, so now I get rid of my sketch layer completely. I'm just going to delete it, right? Go back to my ink layer. I'm going to go over here to my magic wand tool so I can select all of the transparent pixels around my subject. It's really important that you make sure your drawing is completely contiguous, or that the outside lines are completely touching everywhere. Otherwise you'll get this, and you don't want that. You want just the outside pixels selected. Then Control I is going to invert that selection, so I just have, again, my creature, my subject here. And what I'm doing is then, if I go to Edit, I'm going to is it under Edit? It's under Image. I am cropping to selection, which is Control Shift and X. So I just do it on the keyboard. Control Shift X crops my canvas to the selection, and see what it did to that white layer underneath. I have now a way to select my entire if I see I'm on the ink layer right now, I don't want to be selecting all these little individual pieces. I want to select the entire thing like this, and I can hold Control and add to it, so it selects that entire blob of color. And I'm going to leave that selected. Okay. What's nice now is that I have these solid black lines on white, and I'll go ahead and save this file. Hey everybody, thank you for watching. I'm going to save it to my monsters folder. This is going to be slime 01. I like to give a number on them in case I create a new one or something I like better. Okay. All right, so we still have our selection here. I'll create a new layer. And you know what? Actually, just to make this even faster for myself, I will duplicate that white layer. I'm going to rename it Color. All right. The reason I keep a white layer here, one is for selecting it. I can select the entire thing very easily with my magic wand tool. I'm also going to save this as a PNG so that I have a black and white. I just give a BW at the end of the file name. I have a black and white version of this. And you can see now this looks great. Nice, high resolution. Okay. It's going to flatten it and save that as a PNG. I'm going to undo that just so I have my layers back again. Go back to my color layer. And this is going to be a green slime. So let's pull up our colors now and find a good green. Maybe this one right here. We'll just go to F, click, 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 click. There we go. There's our green slime. We're not done yet. All right. Create a new layer. I'm going to double click on this, rename it Shading. And put this on Multiply. And on the opacity, I type in 120. Okay. And I'm going to go to this purple color. I like using this purple for my shadow colors. And on Multiply, it affects things differently than if this was just black. Okay, so this is purple on top of that green color. Let me switch to black and show you what that looks like next to it. See the difference? It's subtle, but when you have multiple colors that sort of inherit the color tone or the hue of the shadow, there's a hue to the shadow, not just a tone. It's not just dark. It's not just a darker green. It really has, to me, it just has a lot more character. And I've been using this color for all of the shadows, for all of my other characters. So it's going to help all of the illustrations feel like they belong in the same environment, in the same game, in the same world. All right. So again, I'm just sort of drawing shapes and then filling them in. Excuse me. And I'm using those dark areas that I did on the line art to kind of help inform me as to where there needs to be this shadow color. Essentially creating a transition between the line art and the color. I think all of this here is going to be in shadow. I might bring in a little bit of shadow on this side of his body. I don't know. It's a slime. Okay. Underneath these sort of furrowed eyebrows here, there'll be a shadow here, so I'll just draw in that shape. F on the keyboard to fill it in. And because this is on a different layer, I can quickly switch to the eraser tool, which is E, and just erase some of the shadow without erasing any of my other work. Do this eyebrow. And what I'm doing is I'm making sure when I cut through these lines, the lines are on top. So as I'm drawing underneath them, you can't see the line, you know, of the color that I'm making right now because the black is on top of it. But I'm making sure that I don't lift my pen off of the tablet. So, you know, I don't want that to happen. So that I can fill it in very quickly. So I gotta do that. F, fill it in. And in general, I make the shadows a little heavier, like if they're on the bottom or the underside of shapes. That helps to imply weight. As well as like all of my cards, basically the light is coming from like the top right or the top left. It depends on how I set up the card. But usually from the top down. So my shadows will be on the bottom. And then I also like to bring in some shadow, like you see here, what I'm doing. So I pull it up into some of these shapes. Okay. A little bit of a shadow there. It's kind of like a bump. This very blobby, amoeba-ish sort of creature. And as long as because I have this still selected, you see these marching ants, because I still have this entire thing selected, as long as I paint outside and I just go past that selection, it'll still be considered contiguous, so that I can use the paint bucket tool and fill in the shape I just drew. So, granted, this is a very particular, simplified, almost cartoonish style of illustration, especially for this character. He's almost like a Ghostbusters kind of dude. This simple process works really, really well. I'm only, using one color and one brush, and then I have all my shadows done. And if this guy was multicolored, I would have done more coloring and then still done the same process. Go to my purple color on a new layer, set on multiply, and just this one color on top of multiple colors has a great feeling to it. Any questions in the chat? Let me know. What's everybody else working on? So I have maybe 20 to 25 cards illustrated at this point, and I've done all of the design and layout, taking those pieces, taking those illustrations, exported from paint.net into Google Slides, right? Because anybody that's following my channel knows that I'm a huge user and fan of the Google suite of applications, and I'm doing all of the card layouts in Google Slides, and it's really going very, very smoothly. It's a treat to design something that does not get in my way, but helps me get stuff done. I've already made several changes and updates to sort of my first version or my first iteration of the cards. And it is a lot of work. There'll probably be over 200 cards for the base version of the game, and I hope to have like expansion sets and things like that in the future, but let's get the basics done, get it made, and hopefully people like it and have fun playing it. Alright, so I think that might be, we gotta put some shadow on these little things here. And I'm just gonna do like that. Yep. And might just do a few little up and down things here, just so it's not just black and green. Maybe this, fill this one in. These ones I'm not worried about being completely vertical. Alright, so there's the shading. I think this needs a little dithering. So just like I did with my line art, I can kind of dither in some of this cell style shading stuff, and it feels not so flat. It's got a little bit more texture and grit, and just kind of speckle that in here and there wherever I feel like it needs it. You know, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. It's not cross-hatching, right? To me, it's not the same. As soon as you cross-hatch something, to me, it automatically feels flat. And I just noticed I want to put a little bit of shadow actually on the tops of these, because I want it to feel like it sort of recedes back into nothingness. So if I put it on the top here rather than on the bottom, it will look more like a hole, a gape, a crevice, than something that protrudes out. Alright, so that's my shading done. Still have my selection. Create a new layer. Double click. We'll call this one highlights. Hit enter. Oh, let's also change our blending mode to screen, and we'll put our opacity to 120. Alright, so I do the highlights the exact same way. Make sure I'm on the highlight layer, and I go to this light yellow color. I use yellow because it's a warm color. Purple for the shadows because it's a cool color. And again, to me, it works better than just white. Okay, now I'm gonna put in some spots like this because I want this thing to look shiny and wet. So again, I'll create sort of a shape of the highlight. F on my keyboard, fill it in quickly. Then I can kind of clean it up. So now it looks like there's 3 colors happening here, and I guess technically there is, but I didn't go hunting down these colors, you know, these particular hues of green. It's just a light yellow on screen mode, semi-transparent, a dark purple on multiply mode, also semi-transparent. And I zoom out and you can start seeing how that's looking. That looks oozy. That looks like sludge. I mean, at this point I'm almost just scribbling in some of these highlights wherever I want them to be, like larger fields of color, you know, sort of create a shape for it, and then fill it in with the bucket tool. I used to do this kind of stuff with the lasso selection tool in Photoshop and use gradients and sort of fill it in with a gradient. You can do that in here as well. But a couple of things I noticed. One is if I'm just gonna make a selection, might as well make it with actual pixels of the color that I'm going to be filling in with, especially with this sort of style of illustration. And I'm really able to see it a whole lot easier, and then I'm switching a lot fewer times. I'm not switching to the selection tool, then switching my brush, and then switching to the color, and then you know, I'm just with the brush. I can go in, F, paint it in, fill it in, back to the brush. And I do have this selection of the entire thing, so that I'm not going outside my, you know, I'm not culling outside the lines, essentially. I'm still careful because I could do this, I don't want to do that. But if I go outside the boundary here, it doesn't matter. Becomes kind of zen after a while, just drawing in these shapes, filling them in. Very relaxing in a way. I don't like that looking like a stripe. Get rid of that. Back to the brush. Just make it simple. Alright, we'll zoom out, see how it's looking. I think it needs a little bit of a highlight right underneath these eyes, because these eyes are also sort of just sunken in. Yeah, that's looking slimy. Alright, for this one, I don't normally do this, but for this one I'm going to create one more layer. I'm going to call it Shine. At 100%, I'm just going to put in a few white spots. Just completely white, because I want this thing to look glossy. And zoom out and see. I want to make sure I'm not overdoing it or underdoing it. So the light's not going to hit every single one of these, but anywhere that feels right. Especially where it's sort of, it's, you know, kind of bubbling up. That'll get a little shine. I'm trying not to make them look, you know, perfectly round. Yeah, there we go. Need some of that right in here. I think that's enough. Just when you think it's enough, add more. Alright, let's go ahead and save that. And then Control-Shift-S for save as. We're going to save this as a PNG. Give it the color at the end of the file name so I know which one it is when I go to make the card. Okay, there it is. Looking good. Cool. I can deselect that now. just for good measure, I'll save it one more time. I like it. And there's the slime illustration done. All right, so now I've got a black and white version of it. As a PNG. See where this dark black checkered pattern is all transparent. I have a colored version of it. That looks pretty good. And then of course my paint.net file, which has layers. There's a wolf I did yesterday. You can see the same technique. Thick black lines, very simple color job. Just a few colors. Use that purple for my shadows. You see how it kind of, especially for this, any kind of gray, you can really see that it is actually purple in the shadows. And it just looks different than if I just use black. It just really works, I think, for the mood that I want. Here's a bear. Same thing, like in his claws here, you can see that it's purple. And it affects the brown on him also a little differently than if it was just black. My goblin. So these are coming along. Thank you guys for joining me for the ride in this live stream. I'll go ahead and start setting up this card in Google Slides, and I'll have more to come. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.